So, guys, I want to talk about AEW Rampage, and what I really want to say is that it's definitely very, very unfortunate that the show was canceled. Because anytime a television, a company loses like television time, that's not good, really. But I also think it's very important that they lose it as well, because Tony Khan, as we all know, is somebody with a lot of money, a lot of resources, and he's not like a Paul Heyman in the 1990s where honestly success and failure meant a lot. And then also he's not like WWE in the 90s where, Vince was like rising in, income and everything like that, really. Like there had to be a lot of high risks, really. So sometimes when somebody has billions upon billions of dollars and somebody's making so much money from their father's business, you can kind of hide all the profit loss, really. So I think that, it should be a reminder to him that he failed in an area. And, this year really, kind of encapsulates a lot of failures of AEW, really, so hopefully he learns, a lot from, how the show did not succeed. And the other thing that I will say about, this is the reason why he failed was, for a couple of reasons. That Rampage really has no purpose. That, as we said, that with Rampage, what happens is that you just have, it's a continuation of AEW with, B grade or C grade or D grade type of matches, so, I think honestly they want to come back. I would just say make it a 1 hour ROH or make a 2 hour ROH show and feature wrestlers that, you don't normally feature. I think AEW should have 3 shows. They should have AEW Dynamite where you feature your main roster, AEW Collision where you feature like your B roster, but you're leading to matches to pay-per-views. And that should be like, as I said, put Shane Taylor Promotions on there, make them in the ROH AEW Trios division. You may have like wrestlers like Pac or Claudio kind of main event the show, or Daniel Garcia and a couple of other ones, just the up and comers. And then you kind of have Ring of Honor just be like your developmental mixed in with like, some veterans and other people to make the show kind of pop, really. And then you kind of see like, you may have a wrestler like Anthony Bowens and Max Caster, you like be in ROH for a while, as single stars, see what that's like for them. And then you kind of can, maybe put the ROH title on them, and then you kind of see what they do. And then you kind of, then you have a match, and then you kind of lead them over to Collision, and they're there for a while, and then you kind of put them on Dynamite again as single stars. That, like, you need to kind of just do more of that, or you do that with the Von Erichs, or you do that with like the Outrunners. Like the Outrunners would have been a great tag team to have, on ROH, winning some titles and then going over to Collision and then going over to Dynamite, really. Like, there really has to be like a sense of sequences. I think that, having a show that's like match after match after match, like as I said, that's what's hurting Tony, because he has to understand that, it's not dream matches. It's not just, you take wrestlers like Atlantis Jr., which most people don't know about, and you put him in a match with Adam Copeland and other things like that, because that just doesn't appeal to anybody. Because, like I've said, really, like the issue is that they don't have any stories. The issue is that there's no character motivations. Their issue is that, there's not a lot of character development. You need that. And I also will say that one thing I do hope that Tony learns from this is that I think with professional wrestling, one thing he has to learn is that he has to find better writers and better storytellers. Like, honestly, like what would happen if, you had 10 to 20 people in ROH who can tell stories, and they'll talk to the wrestlers and be like, okay, let's talk about your life and maybe we can make like a story out of it. Like what would happen if, Athena was a bully and she kind of incorporated that into her character? What would happen if Dustin kind of incorporated, oh, well, I'm the old man who wants to have one shot at glory? Or what would happen if you incorporate Chris Jericho as kind of like the, like the old man who wants just to hold everybody down, and he has like people who follow him, and then people just are like, no, we don't like who you are, Chris Jericho. You kind of like our glory hog. There's so many good stories that they can tell, really. And then you kind of like have another group of people who do that in Collision, like, the Outrunners. They want to do tributes to like wrestlers, to the wrestlers in the 1980s. You can have people say, okay, you know what, what's that really? You guys are not serious. You guys are just being like Black Machismo, Jay Lethal. You guys are just there to be silly and whatever. You take a wrestler like Jay Lethal, and then you're like, okay, you know what? He wants And again, he's in his 40s. He has never really been at the top of a company outside of Ring of Honor, and nobody's really seen what he could do, really. Like the guy in his 40s who wants one more shot at glory, really. Like there's so many stories that they can really tell. And I think that, part of this Rampage failure should be a reminder to Tony and a couple of other wrestlers that, what, if they put so much more money in stories, if Tony had like an actor's gym and he taught the wrestlers how to be acting and compelling, or even like some creative writing classes on how to be a creative writer and really, really teach, like how to make compelling stories or be more experimental and other things like that, that there could be something. Like, I look at Private Party and look at Top Flight. One of them is like a team they're both two teams that worked really hard for years. Private Party's won titles. Top Flight has not really. The one's been jobbers. So you kind of see that, oh, well, I want to have what you have. I'm a young person putting in the grind, and I'm not getting the attention that I deserve, really, like pettiness. So there's so many things that they can tell, really. There's so many stories that they can do in AEW, but it seems like, as I said, that, you can't just bring Rampage back and you can't kind of make it a show that's just match after match, really. It has to have a purpose. But I think a better purpose would be a 2-hour Dynamite show with your main roster, 2-hour Collision with like different wrestlers and different people. That could be, that can graduate to the Collision show. And then, honestly, that can graduate to the Dynamite show, pardon me. And then also you have a Ring of Honor show with developmental people. And you try to make it, just like what it was, like a decade ago, where you're kind of almost looking to hire the next generation, or you're looking at Dustin's Gym, or you're looking at Combat Zone Wrestling. You're looking at a lot of different places, or even TNA, a lot of places where you see like this next generation. You have a good eye for talent, and then you kind of see, where they can kind of go and stuff like that. Like, I think that, like I said, there's a lot that they can learn from this failure. And one of the biggest thing that they have to learn is really like, that this does count as a loss. This does count as a failure. And this also does count as we talked about, that, you emphasize a lack of storytelling and great matches, but, try to emphasize more like matches and emphasize more stories, more like character motivations, more, people just wanting to fight for a reason, and emphasize like a developmental, where you see somebody like, like I said, like the Von Erich boys, how they're the trios champion. They want to be the tag champions, prove that they can do it without, maybe the wing of Dustin, really. And then they kind of get the ROH tag team championships. And then they're like, these are good titles, but we want to be on the main roster. We know we can be something. And then they go after the AEW championships, and maybe they do it in Texas or something like that. Like, character motivations, really. So, I just hope that they learn from this failure of Rampage. And if Tony doesn't, maybe another year will be Collision, and maybe another year will be Dynamite. But learn from your failure, Tony.